Let's have a quick look at how to set up your company in Orax SDI. Most of the functions that you need to perform are located under Company Setup and then also System Settings. Company Setup is more financial related, whereas System Settings are basically parameters and changes for the specific modules, and that affects how the system works. But you need to do the company setup first of all. So click Company Setup, and all the parameters are managed per tab. The first one is your company detail, where you add your registered name and your trading name, put on a nice logo. Experiment with this because it will show up on sales quotations, all kinds of documents and reports, and you need a format which is here that works well on those. So it may require a little bit of experimentation, but if you do this right, it will look fantastic on your printed documents. Your registration numbers can be put in there, contact details, these all end up on sales and reports documents. Financial documents, so you can add standard notes to your quotations, orders, invoices, credit notes, your statements, what period your statements will be in, and your purchase order notes. So these will be at the bottom of your financial documents and give customers an indication like terms and conditions and guidelines and stuff like that. Maybe your banking detail where they can do deposits and that kind of information. Then your financial year, will you be starting on the 1st of March? Just set up that in here, and your VAT setup and your local currency. So depending on your local currency, which is quite important, the system will then recognize suppliers and customers in a different currency and do a conversion on those financial documents. Finally, you can set up your financial contact details. These will be available in certain reports and areas. So that's the basic setup. Then the next two tabs are your services and products. Those are the items you'll be selling. A service is something that does not have a stock level. So those services you can set up here. It's quite easy. Just add plus and define your service. Your products, in the same way, you can load one at a time, or from you can load both of these in batch as well from a spreadsheet. So once you've got those set up, you can technically start doing quotations. You need something if you want to sell in these two tabs. Your assets, you can load your accounting department will be loading assets in the system as you carry on. As you buy new assets, they'll be added here, and purchases and sales against them will be logged. Your GL accounts will be set up. You can use the standard account setup and then tweak it as needed. You can create any bank accounts that you have in the real world here. Configure your expenses if you have specific expense account needs. And then in the centers tab, you'll be creating divisions or departments. So for instance, let's assume that you are a group and you do have different divisions or departments in your company. They need to sell using different sales documents. You need to record their sales and their accounting information in a separate set of statements. You can set those up in here. And then finally, there's a bunch of settings that is only related to the financials of your company. So a quick overview would mean that the company detail is required in all cases. If you want to sell, you need to set up services and products, and all the rest of these tabs are mostly related to accounting. So if you'll not be doing accounting in the system, you can ignore them for now. But the last tab is important because that's where you tweak financial document, where you do a lot of options related to maybe sales and sales approvals and the way your quotation will look there's a lot of document changes you can make here. So first of all, your financial options are, for instance, when does your aging start? If you'll be billing customers and sending statements, you need to tell the system when does it need to pick up those first opening balances. And there's a lot of stuff around security. Who can see financial documents in the system? So in this first financial options section, you need to just go through those parameters and see if there's anything applicable. The next one relates to financial documents. So that's the format and notifications around it. Those include sales quotations and invoices and purchase orders and such. Then we'll be looking at the internal approval of sales documents. So you can tell the system to an internal approval is required before a sales rep can send a quotation to a customer, or before a sales order is accepted, things like that. External sales approval relate to how the customers may have the self-help functions to approve their own quotations. Purchase documents, there may be an approval process required when a purchase order is created. Those are managed in there. Then billing settings relate to statements, mostly customer statements and settings around that. E-commerce and online shopping is directly related to an online shop, which is a module in the system, and how you handle quantities and back orders and lead times and shipping and ordering and approvals and many of those options. Then the inventory and location options are directly related to inventory movement and such. The sales pipeline and CRM options are related to the sales pipeline, which could be linked to sales quotation. So you can technically say that you're going to have a separate sales pipeline, or the sales pipeline will be linked to sales quotations and kind of automatically managed. And those options are in there. Then the catalog and inventory options are extra options that relate sometimes to the online shop, but also to point of sale systems, and inventory options related to the selling side of items. Batch approvals, so if you need to segregate responsibilities, you can set that up here. If you need integration to your Sage 1 application, they are set up here. And finally, financial privacy and enhanced security is in order to deal with Orax support and financial privacy. And this is the basic overview. Once you've done the company setup, you should be set with a pretty good accounting and financial, or let's say sales related system. So I just want to quickly go to the system settings. There's a lot of options that you can set up here in order to ensure that the system works the way it should. On the top of the accounting of the system settings, you will see your disaster recovery status. So it's a separate system. It'll tell you real time, it's 0 minutes behind. So that means our disaster recovery system is currently functional and 100% up to date. On top, you've got buttons to go to manage user accounts, to view your email logs, emails sent to and from the system, all message logs like SMS, text messages, or push notifications. Those logs are in there. You can do data administration. That would mean loading or exporting specific data in spreadsheet format. You have access to your workflow dashboard. So if we do customization on the system with workflows, the dashboard is available here, and you can also manage your own workflow notifications. In case notifications are sent by a workflow, they can be managed in here, separate from the developer interface. System files are where we upload certain templates or icons needed. It's a very admin a technological and developer related system, so most users won't use it. And then finally, styles and HTML is related to the user interface and website customization, so that also is very developer and focused. And then if we look at the sections in these settings, first of all, the general parameters is a good idea to go through them and just make a few basic settings. You need to set up an administrator and basic notifications and access to calendars, sharing of calendars, and those kind of basic settings in this section. The system uses categories throughout, whether it's for a product, for products on the online shop, whether it's sales categories or service categories. So you can have categories for services that you perform, and so you want to set those up. They could be related to several functional areas in your company or in your products. There's a lot of options, and it ends up that at the end of the day, if you look at your system, how will you be reporting? So you definitely want your products or services under certain categories, and you definitely want your services under categories so that you can know what kind of effort are you spending on certain categories or sales in certain areas. Regions, the regions allow you to just define your basic reasons for your system. Then customer account types. So all your customers need ideally to be linked to account types, so you can group them into specific boxes for marketing or sales related actions. Then we look at the service desk. So the service desk, of course, is almost related to every company. Every company should have some form of a service desk. Our service desk in Orax SDI is extremely powerful and meant for service management, but you can use it on a very basic level as well. You may want to set up some of these basics in the service desk, though they are not necessarily needed. Then the service desk assignment and notification parameters are very important if you want to use the service desk. First of all, there's some basic options that says how can you create service requests that customers send. How do you initiate those? Then how do you route them? So if a customer does send an email or a request to the system, we need to know if you have a team of operators or consultants or technicians that need to deal and resolve these issues. How do we route the correct issue to the correct consultant? And so there are some options in here where the system can do automatic assignment or have a routing team where there are certain individuals who will be assigning those issues to the correct people. Then we also need to deal with spam. So there are options for that. Spam can be sent to your help desk, and that creates bogus calls. So there are options to deal with that. We also have sending options. When we do send to updates to a customer from the service desk, how are those? There are some options there that we can use to tweak those updates. There's internal notifications. So let's assume that some issues are not attended to in time, or something is urgent. We may want to escalate or use SMSs for certain things, so those options are in there. And finally, we can actually tell the system, if we haven't sorted this issue in the last 6 months, just resolve it for us, which is probably a bad idea, but there may be cases for that, and you have the options in there. Then other service related options are our wide area and automation module. This is an area where external systems are monitored and managed by the system, and so there are some options in there in order to manage this. This could be access control related, it could be just monitoring servers, or it could even be a service that you provide to customers. Then we have options for tasks and projects. The educational module have some options, so we can do an entire educational business in the system where you create courses and subjects and do assessments, everything online, and there are options for that. Then there's a bunch of module and menu options. These relate to not all modules in the system are active by default, so you can switch them on in this section. And also you can do team isolation. Let's assume you have a large national company or group, and those teams function individually from each other. You can isolate them so that they do not have access to other, so that a specific team works in their own bubble as a unit and does not have access to certain areas of other teams. So you can set those up in here. And then just a few reporting and printing options are available there. Then there are portal options. So in terms of styling and the the apps, we do provide the standard apps as well as custom apps. There's a lot of options to set there. Then any form of e-commerce related and website, more public related options, the system is able to manage to provide a website service, online shop, and also other social integration options where all the content is managed in this CRM infrastructure but presented to the public via its own structures. You can set those up there. This is where resellers and partners configure some support parameters. Development keys just needed for the SDK. And then the next section is actually part of the financial company setup settings that also display here if you have the correct access. And that is the basic setup of the system. Then I just want to quickly brush over the development side. So this system is extremely complete and covers a lot of business areas, but in most companies there are times when you need to manage custom processes or processes unique to your specific business, and we have an SDK we can build very complex and specialized modules in the system in order so that all your system needs remain in one system and in one app, so your employees won't need different smartphone apps. Everything will be inside a single Orax app on their smartphones, which is extremely powerful, and it integrates with all the other modules in the system. So that means that just about any need is well, not any, but most needs are catered for by the system, whether it's custom development or just custom modules and processes and workflows. And then finally, you may want to start with some form of collaboration setup that is as simple as just creating one or two groups that can be used to for communication in the company. By default, there is a company wall. So on your homepage, there's an add comment. If you expand that, it will post to the company wall or any other groups that you have access to.